If you have been part of the internet mysteries community for a while now, you have definitely seen this GIF of this woman. For those not aware of who she is, don't worry because only recently has that question been answered. But before we go into the new findings, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. In 1995, a British artist named Tracey Emin would release a short film titled Why I Never Became a Dancer. The film takes a personal and autobiographical approach, as Emin recalls her teenage years living in the seaside town of Margate. It would later take a dark turn as Emin describes some of the traumatic events she experienced in her life. A couple examples included being in numerous relationships with older men while she was a teenager, and how she lived a promiscuous lifestyle and was still learning about her body at such a young age. Towards the end, Emin is seen dancing as a way to express her thoughts and emotions, and we later learned that she entered a British dancing competition. But as she competed, Emin would be humiliated by a group of men that she had relationships with. While performing, they shouted numerous insults at her. After this, Emin would run off set as she felt embarrassed about the situation. The film's last message ends with her saying the men's name, and dancing off into the distance.
Shane, Eddie, Tony, Doug, Richard, this one's for you.
Despite the film gaining many positive reviews, not everyone was too fond of her film. And this is when a band known as the White House would make a response to her film titled Why You Never Became a Dancer. They specifically made noise music and became well known based on their distorted sound and questionable lyrics. The lyrics in their song accuses Em and Tracey for making up the entire story she told in her film, with some of the lyrics being heavily graphic as seen. Now, you may have noticed this gif of a woman that's shown throughout the entirety of the video. She appears to be heavily edited to look creepy, and is animated to be speaking in a random manner. Ever since it was posted all the way back in 2008, it has managed to garner over 4 million views, with the description and song itself not giving any references or knowledge about the woman at all. This odd low quality video has led many to question, who is she? And where is she from? So let's dig deep into this. Now of course, people have suggested that reverse image searching would reveal the answer, but unexpectedly, no results showed up. Going back to the GIF, the woman's mouth can be seen moving in an unnatural manner, and left many to question what was the purpose behind this. Was she saying something, or was it all just for an uncanny effect? A Twitter user who goes by the online persona, Arrowburger, explained, "The GIF from this video has always scared me. In the past few months I've been really curious where the lady's face came from. Me and my girlfriend theorized it was a still of an Inuit woman from some old interview. But the truth is really dark. I remember September last year I spent a night really trying to look into this GIF's origin to no avail. The truth of its origin was right under my nose the entire time, and I scoffed at it thinking it was unrelated, especially since the source was some random YouTube comment. The commenter stated, I know a lot of people have asked who the girl in the GIF is, but the most possible answer is Reiko Takimura, a 21-year-old Japanese woman murdered by serial killer Kiyoshi Okubo in 1971. The picture is heavily edited and animated, so her mouth moves and she blinks. Here's the Wikipedia page that mentions her. I don't know for sure, but this is most likely who she is. After this, Arrowburger would look up Reiko Takimura, and was directed by this image of an unknown woman at the time, which led them to doubt the comment's legitimacy. After more mindless scrolling, they stumbled upon another comment on the same video that nearly shared the same information, but this time a link was attached. Everyone's talking about the audio, but not the person in the video. Is that an animation? Who the hell is that? She was one of the murder victims of the Kiyoshi Okubo incident, which happened around the 1970s. Here's the original photo of her, which is rumored to come from some old Japanese book. Upon clicking on the link, this is what they saw. The original GIF of the video, that now has a name. 2 months later after the original discovery, a Reddit post was uploaded on the r/internet mystery subreddit. User Lane Campbell 77 explained that they also discovered the original image, but this time, it was on a website named thetubero.com. They explained that this website is full of online obscure mysteries and urban legends that are still gaining attention till this day. Lane Campbell would eventually stumble upon an article about the Why You Never Became a Dancer video. Going back to the Reddit post, another discovery was made. The OP not only found the full pic of Reiko Takimura, but the 7 other victims in Kiyoshi were also shown. They gave a bit more background information, such as Reiko was only 21 at the time she was brutally raped and murdered. Despite getting a picture of one of the pages, the title of the book was still a mystery. Thankfully, however, more information on Kiyoshi and the situation were linked. Reflecting back on his childhood, Kiyoshi Okubo was born in Takisaki, Gunma Prefecture. His mother, who was half Russian, half Japanese, was excessively fond of him throughout his entire life. To put it in perspective, there was one occasion when a neighbor complained about Kiyoshi when he was playing in their front yard. Kiyoshi was knocking fruit out of their persimmons tree, and when he was asked to stop, Kiyoshi's mother responded that they shouldn't have planted the tree in the first place and that it was initially their fault. Another scenario involved him inappropriately touching a girl classmate, but of course, when his mother was informed about the situation, she explained that he wouldn't do such a thing, and that they were simply lying about the whole situation. So clearly there was a lack of responsibility and discipline being implemented. His siblings also adored him, and would often refer to him as Boki-chan, which roughly translates to a young boy. While his mothers and siblings desperately cared for him, the same can't be said about his father. Reportedly, his father would perform sexual acts with mistresses right in front of him. Kiyoshi was also dealing with other forms of psychological abuse, and would unleash his anger at school. And his cultural background didn't help either, as he would often be scrutinized for being a mix of Asian and Russian. A prime example of this was when he entered elementary school on the day Pearl Harbor was attacked, and because of his somewhat Western features, it made him an easy target for bullying. After this specific incident, Kiyoshi went insane. Let's just say he was no stranger to criminal acts at the young age of 11, since he sexually assaulted a neighborhood girl and even shoved rocks into her reproductive organs. It was during this time that he was commonly referred to as the son of Kodaira, which refers to another Japanese serial killer, Yoshio Kodaira. It seemed to be an inaccurate comparison at first, but as we learned more about his inhumane crimes, it became accurate. During his childhood and early adulthood, Kiyoshi spent a majority of his time assaulting women and being arrested. He went from a local junior high school to a part-time high school, but dropped out after half a year. In order to make some money, he started working at an electronics store in Yokohama. However, he soon returned to his parents' house and opened a radio repair shop. But when he was 19, he was involved in a theft and his store closed down. After this, his evil-minded actions became much worse. His first act was on July 12, 1955, which involved him pretending to be a university student in Isesaki City. He made contact with a 17-year-old girl, and in total, he was sentenced to 1 year and 6 months in prison and suspended for 3 years. 6 months later, however, he attempted again, and this time he was sentenced to 3 years and 6 months in prison. He would be released on December 15, 1959, and at this point it looked like he was done with all his criminal acts. But of course he didn't let go. Kiyoshi became happily married in 1962. They both opened up a milk store in their home, and had a son and daughter together, but it was at this moment, clearly had no remorse nor did he care about his past actions. As for the next 7 years after his release, Kiyoshi continued on with his cruel deeds. In June 1965, he was accused of blackmailing a young boy who attempted to steal an empty milk bottle he had delivered. After this, the store sales completely plummeted, as no one wanted to support a business of a depraved man. Through interviews, Kiyoshi stated that the police authorities treated him poorly, because he was often in trouble with the law, and due to them being rude to him, he wanted to cause even more harm and death to others. Since Kiyoshi was let out of jail, this is when he decided to go on his murder spree, but in order to prepare for that, he had to properly set himself up. Kiyoshi approached his targets in his luxurious car, and to not seem like a creep, he had 2 personas to attract women. One of them involved pretending to be a successful artist as his car was filled with painting supplies, and he even wore a rebet and a babushka. The other persona was a high school teacher, to which he also wore professional clothing, and had multiple textbooks in the backseat of his car. On top of this, in order to disguise his true identity, he would refer to himself as Yaki Watanabe when approaching his victims. So with all of that, he would ask them if they were interested in modeling for one of his paintings, to which a small group of women would agree. It has been documented that his murder spree lasted for 41 days, and began from March 31st to May 10th, 1971. It was during the long 41 days that the local authorities were well aware of Kiyoshi, since reports of the disappearing women were broadcasted. Residents were told to be on the lookout for a man luring women in his white Mazda, but sadly, despite being severely wanted, 8 victims were still murdered by Kiyoshi. Those victims being Akimi Sato, Miyako Suda, Meiko Okawa, Seiko Kawabata, Kazuyo Kawaho, Chieko Ida, Nako Takanashi, and Reiko Takimura. All of them were between the ages of 16 to 21. Now before every murder, Kiyoshi preferred to spend time with them. He would cater to them differently based on the persona he used to attract them. So with that being said, I'll be covering all of the 8 victims and their encounters with him. Meiko Suda was a 3rd-year high school student who loved arts, so it only made sense for her to meet up with him. He had previously seen her at a nearby railway station, which was a common place for him to stay at, as he would look for victims there. It was during this time that he recognized her and struck up a conversation about actual respected artists such as Van Gogh. He also talked about his art studio at Lake Haruna, which, just to clarify, wasn't owned by him. Meiko was convinced enough to go there with him, and was almost immediately granted by his inappropriate advances. She was uncomfortable and requested to see some ID. Kiyoshi did show his driver license, however he forgot that it showed his true identity. She became angry at him and threatened to get him arrested since her brother was a prosecutor at the time. As an act of desperation, Kiyoshi then strangled her to death, and left her body buried in a shallow grave. A couple days later, he met with his second victim, Meiko Okawa, who was a waitress at Akita Takisaki Station. On April 6, 1971, she was convinced to go to a nearby hotel to perform sexual acts with him, but things took a quick turn. Meiko lied about being 22 years old, as she was 17 and married at the time. Her husband was also a cop. Once again, he was threatened that he would get caught again, and once again, he strangled her and buried her at an industrial park. The third victim was Chieko Ida. Kiyoshi and Chieko had met around 4 times before, and so they've been spotted together in the public. Because of this, many ongoers have informed her about his past, his true identity, and other personal information. When they went on their 5th date, she explained that she knew everything about him and felt unsafe being around him. It was during this time they were at the same park that he buried the last victim, and so, once again, he strangled her and buried her in the same location. However, unlike the other 2 victims, Kiyoshi wrote a poem about her and left it on her dead body. Unfortunately, there was no reason on why he specifically left her a note. 4th woman, Naruko Kawabata, met up with Kiyoshi just 1 day after he murdered Chieko. He asked her out for coffee and then took her for a drive, and they both had a common interest in Japanese and Western music. So that was the main conversation during the car ride. However, for the 3rd time, Naruko brought up that her father worked at a police station. An argument would occur that caused Naruko to throw underwear that Kiyoshi gave to her earlier at his face. This heavily angered him, so he tugged the underwear and strangled her with it. Next, we'll be looking at Akimi Sato, the youngest victim at just 16 years old. They both met together at a motel, and as expected, Akimi mentioned that her father was also a cop, and he became enraged. As a way to cool himself off, he drove Akimi and himself to the park. But this didn't seem to help, as he explained his hatred towards cops, to which he dumped her body in a ditch at the side of the road. Kazuyo Kawaho was his next victim, who met Kiyoshi at the Asisaki railway station. They decided to rent out a motel for the night, but out of nowhere, Kazuyo stated that she knew his true identity. She even found a picture of one of the older victims, Chieko Ida, in the backseat of his car when he wasn't looking. This startled him, and so he drove off to the side of the road, strangled her, and then buried her. The 7th victim was Reiko Takimura. This was her 2nd time meeting Kiyoshi, and they were hoping just to have a good time at a coffee shop, but unfortunately, all the parking spots were full, so they settled on just driving around the area. Topics such as art, mountain climbing, music, and sports were just a handful of things discussed. After driving for a while, Kiyoshi parked his car near Mulberry Field, and made a pass at Reiko. She slapped him and explained that her father was a criminal, and that he would do terrible things to him for making a pass. With the mood completely changed, she attempted to leave the car, but was unsuccessful as he choked her to death. The final victim was Nako Takazuki, who met Kiyoshi 7 times. They had sexual intercourse in his car during one of their first meetings. On their last meeting, she asked him if he's ever been to prison before. When questioned, he awkwardly ignored her and drove away to an empty parking lot. Nako had said that numerous people had seen her in his car, and would know that she had been with him, To cover himself up, Naoko was killed and buried in another field. During these deaths and disappearances, many of the family members became worried as they had no idea what happened to them. But out of all the family members, Reiko's brother was in the most distress. Mitsu Takimura called the police to report a missing person. While waiting for the police to investigate, Mitsu took matters into his own hands and started searching for frequent places Reiko would go to in the local area. One day while walking on the side of the road, he saw Kiyoshi, was Reiko's bicycle on the side of the road. He noticed that he had gloves on and was wiping it down to presumably remove his fingerprints. Mitsu approached the man in a concerned manner and questioned whether the bike was his, fully knowing that it wasn't, and he just wanted to see how he would react. Kiyoshi was frozen up when questioned, and before even giving an answer, he fled the area in his car. Thankfully, Mitsu quickly managed to get his license plate number and gave it to the officers. To get more involved, Mitsu's family, friends, and employees of his company also joined and formed a search party. On May 10th, one party spotted Kiyoshi's car, and so they chased him. However, he managed to get away. By May 12th, just 2 days later, over 150 people had joined the search party and were split up into 70 cars, with each car searching one of the 18 targeted areas. A day later on the 13th, Kiyoshi was found with a young woman in his car. Thankfully, she didn't end up as a victim. Before being confronted by the police, he gave her money to take a taxi home. Kiyoshi was later handed over to the police by the search party. Just a day later, the Fujioka police obtained an arrest warrant for kidnapping and arrested him that same day. Upon his capture, Kiyoshi Okubo confessed all of his killings, starting off with Reiko Takimura's murder, which he led them to her grave in Mulberry Field nearly 2 weeks after his arrest. When the police asked him about the 7 other remaining bodies, Kiyoshi insisted that he would take them to the specific locations. However, the police were concerned that since there were local people already around those areas, that they would attempt to hurt him or even kill him. So instead, the officers decided that he should draw a precise map, showcasing the locations. After all the 7 bodies were found, it was reported that after investigation, that all their jewelry were removed to prevent investigators from detecting the bodies using metal detectors. The forensic team also did a hair analysis of all 8 victims, who were then traced back to being in his car at one point. The trial for Kiyoshi Okubo started off strange. He already admitted to the police that he committed the crimes, but while in court, he stated this: "I became the brute that I am because of the police. During their investigation of the previous 2 cases in which I was involved, they treated me very badly. Their punishment was dealt out in a way that completely destroyed my humanity. It made me rebel against authority." As a last comment on the case, Kiyoshi went on to say, "If I could be reborn, I would like to come back as a weed. I was told by a woman I once knew that no matter how much weeds are thread open, they snap back. That's the kind of existence I would like to have in my next life." Even with all his arguments, he pled guilty on October 25th, 1971. Through more court appearances and a full analysis of his inhumane crimes, it was determined that Kiyoshi would be convicted and sentenced to death. It was expected that he would appeal and attempt to fight back, but unexpectedly he didn't. When questioned by an acquaintance on why he didn't, he stated, "Even if I survive, I will end up hurting the victim's bereaved family, and I want to escape the pain myself." So, exactly 3 years and 1 month later on January 22nd, 1976, Kiyoshi Okubo was hanged at the Tokyo Detention Center. While Kiyoshi was officially dead, his negative effects still lingered. Numerous books about him were created since his case was heavily widespread in Japan. It even got to a point where a TV show was created about him. The one-shot TV drama titled The Crime of Kiyoshi Okubo made its official debut on August 29, 1983. Famous Japanese comedian Takashi Kitano performed the role of Kiyoshi. From what I read online, the show was rated highly because they heavily described Kiyoshi's actions. There was absolutely no filter, and everything was described in great detail, which was acceptable at this time, since it was commonly believed that his actions were so depraved that only faintly describing them would do the viewers no justice. Now, going back to the found image in the book, Lane Campbell would make another discovery. They came across a video that showcases the deceased victims, and at approximately the 10:51 mark, we see this. An official second image of Reiko Takimura. Now, it was assumed that after this discovery, the search was finally over. And I mean, I guess that was the case until about a week ago. YouTuber Lazy Masquerade uploaded a video discussing the origin behind the White House GIF, and is the inspiration for why I even made this video in the first place. In the video, he dedicates a small portion of it talking about where the book that contained the victims' images came from. They came from a magazine titled Post-War Taboo Crime History that was published by the company Core Magazine Limited. As described by him, this company had a poor reputation, as in one of their magazines, unfiltered CP was posted onto it. He also took it a step further to find even more images of Reiko. Digging through some old Japanese news broadcasts and articles, he managed to find a broadcast that features real footage from her memorial service. As we currently know, this is one of the most detailed pictures of Reiko Takemura's face, followed by another image that's highly believed to be her, but is currently not confirmed. Other footage was shown of her mother and brother, and it even included videos of her when she was much younger. Even with all the discoveries, there's two questions remaining. Who made this GIF? And why? And with that being said, who knows if we'll ever find the answer. And that ends it off for today's video. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys like this one because I do enjoy talking about the origins of disturbing images, especially when there's a whole ton of information about them and when there's an entire case surrounding them. So with that being said, just let me know in the comments if you guys want to see any more of these types of videos. Once again, I want to thank Lazy Masquerade for his video and for finding even more information. I'll leave a link to his video in the description down below. But anyways, that's enough of that. Thank you guys once again for watching, and as always, have a great one.